right, I'm hitting the big green button, which actually isn't green on this, but that's okay. And again, there's that just sort of unknown, ambiguous amount of delay between when I hit the
Right.
button and when we're actually live on
Oh,
the internet.
I just saw it.
Oh,
Cool.
hey!
Yeah.
Well, then at this point, we must be live. So, hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast. I am Michael, and tonight I have with me a special guest co host. You know him, you love him, Tanner from the Shadow of the Cabal podcast. Tanner, say hello to everyone.
Hey guys, how's it going? Good to see everybody.
Yay! So hopefully we'll have a few people join us here in the chat shortly, and we can talk to them. But this is going to be somewhat of a faculty meeting, loosely associated with that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be more about like a year in review and talk about the future, and then just sort of hang out and talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
But as we always like to do with a faculty meeting, we like to take a moment and talk about why we're here normally. We're going to have some conversations about role-playing games, and we hope that through these conversations that we can share some of the experience we have gleaned from our many years of playing tabletop RPGs. But we understand that the opinions we share and the advice we give may not work at every table every time. But there is one piece of advice that we do feel is pretty universal. And Tanner, what is that one piece of advice?
If you are having fun, you are doing it right.
That is correct, sir. So no matter what game you're playing, the system or edition, what rules you use, don't use, or misuse, as long as your table's having fun, then you're doing it right. So with that out of the way, Tanner, how the heck are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. 2017 is finally over, the year that would not end. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like it was like 35 years of my life. It is, yeah. But a lot of, as worldwide, not a super great year, but I think that both me and you can agree that we had some good personal accomplishments and with the RPG Academy and life and role-playing games in general.
Yeah, I would agree. We strive actually to keep our show pretty well politic free. I know some shows embrace that. I'm all for it. But it kind of our motto is anyone's welcome at our table as long as at the table we're just playing games. So
right.
We don't really talk a lot about politics, but yeah, this last year politically was pretty rough for me personally. I very much lean liberal, like hard liberal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of rough for me, but again, I'm trying to focus on the podcast. We had some very good stuff. Our network grew, which is always exciting. In fact, I think you had something to do with that.
I did, yeah. I believe in either April or May, I officially joined the RPG Academy Network. It was awesome of you guys to give me a listen and accept me into your fold, and I feel right at home. It's crazy how fast you make friends with other people who are also within sort of your, not only your sphere, but kind of in the industry, and they're into the exact same your niche thing that you're doing. Yeah.
And and again, for anyone who may have applied to be part of the network, if we said no or we didn't get around to evaluating your show, that is not in any way stating that your show isn't good or great or worthy or better than us. But there's just a few things we look at. Like one, if a show's too similar to ourselves, and with our show particularly, we kind of do so much. There were a couple of shows that we looked at that probably should have been part of the network if they weren't too close to what we already have.
Right.
And so, that's kind of how the ball bounces, I guess. So I want to thank you and your crew for joining us. Like I continue to be astounded that these really good shows that have amazing players and DMs and GMs and sound effects and audio quality are like, yeah, we'll hitch our wagon to what you're doing. I'm just like, I don't know why, but thank you.
See, I think it's kind of, I think you've got it backwards. I think a lot of people, I know myself in particular, like I first sort of was turned on to you guys by the one-shot episodes that you did in L5R, obviously. I know a lot of people sort of discovered you guys through that. And right. I'm a listener through the One-Shot Network. I'm a listener to your guys' network, obviously. And it's awesome that I feel like the burden of being starstruck, I think, is more on the side of, for lack of a better term, it's more on the side of the people who, you guys put your stamp of approval on and say, you know what, you're good enough and you're something that we want and a voice that we want to distribute to people.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the network for a thing that came directly from spite. It's amazing how much spite can keep a person motivated. And I'm sure I've shared this with people before. I probably repeated myself, but I guess now at this point, like 3 years ago or so, I had got word through the grapevine that we were being evaluated with another network that's much larger than us even now. for inclusion. And so we got really excited about it. We were hoping and, just kind of letting how things go. And then nothing ever came out. They never said no. They just never said anything.
That's the worst.
Yeah. The thing is, we weren't supposed to even know. Like, it was like insider information. So it's one of the things like we should have never even known that we were being looked at. And then when it didn't happen, I just got pissed off. I'm like, screw it. We'll just start our own. And that's what we've done.
That's kind of, it's amazing how much spite can motivate you. I was just speaking to how our show started a little bit. Obviously we were inspired by your guys's series of episodes in Rokugan and the one that GM Jim McClure has run. And now you guys are doing the director's commentary on, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
I'm listening to it very slowly, but I'm soaking it all in so that hopefully I can come out the other end learning something. But I listened to that and I was like, man, there's got to be more L5R actual play podcasts out there, right? And there was another one by another network, podcast network, and I was just so dissatisfied with what they were doing production wise that I thought, man, L5R deserves better than this. We need to put it on a pedestal. So it's almost as much out of positive motivation as it is negative motivation to make stuff sometimes.
Well, and again, it's no secret. We've talked about it a lot of times. When we first started looking at doing our show, I was very focused on the audio quality because I was listening to a bunch of shows trying to get, research. And I found so many that I couldn't listen to. The audio was terrible or the editing was lacking. And I said, we're not going to do that. If we're going to do this, we're going to put the time and energy in. And it seems like now every day there's like 12 new podcasts and they all sound amazing. They all have fantastic audio quality. So for a thing that I hung my hat on for a very long time is now like, yeah, you're just one of everybody at this point. There's nothing special about our quality anymore.
I think it's one of those things where if you like you said, not the market, I don't want to say that. I don't want to sound snobbish here, but like there is such a saturated ecosystem of actual play stuff for something that demands so much of your time and energy to sort of listen to and produce. Like you got to have that audio quality there. And, there's great guides online of how to do it, but that's just sort of what the floor is now as opposed to the ceiling.
Right. I mean, it's one of the things where it's going to sound arrogant, but there's no excuse for poor audio quality anymore. There's too much information. There's too many good examples.
Microphones are so cheap now too.
They're not expensive to get a decent one. Again, if you clearly don't have any money, then don't let that stop you from podcasting. But then just spend more time editing because you can clean up audio. It's easier if you get clean audio, but you can fix it if you don't, or at least make it pretty good.
Absolutely.
So we got quite a few people actually have jumped in. It looks like on chat, not another Nathan's here. Targris is here. And according to what I see, we have more people than that, but not everybody is saying hello, but welcome. This is going to be faculty meeting 121, sort of. I don't know. We're going to give a whole lot of advice. We're going to talk a little bit about last year and about this year, and hopefully just chat with you guys if you have any questions, or you folks, I should say. I'm trying to be more inclusive. I say guys just all the time, just out of habit, but you people that have come and joined us.
That's a conscious effort I've made this year too. I believe one of the Gnome Stew people, they posted a really good thread on Twitter about gender neutral language and specifically addressing people, and it really struck a chord with me. So I'm with you there.
I'm from the South, so I used to say y'all, and then I kind of got out of that, so I think I need to return to my roots and just say y'all all the time.
Y'all is such the plural second person is so important, and I wish we had a better English language word for it. I say y'all too, and I've never lived outside of Illinois in my life, so there you go.
Very cool. All right, so we've already touched on a little bit. Obviously, this past year, our network has grown. Not just you, but we also brought the Greyhawkery blog in as well. Mike Mortellin runs that blog. He's crazy into Greyhawk. If you have any questions about Greyhawk, go there. You will find it's like a rabbit hole of information. You will go down for weeks on end. But all the people who've been a part of the network for a long time, again, I'm just extremely proud of all the people that have, again, like I said, hitched their wagons to ours and like to be associated with us. And I'm just thrilled for everyone. And looking at 2018, I think we're going to have a couple new shows join rather quickly. Probably 2 right together. Though if anyone's paying a lot of attention, you can probably already figure out who those people are. But we're still looking at growing, but we want to measure our growth. I think we've expanded too quickly in the past. And I like to do a little bit more measured. So like you said, everybody kind of, you sniff each other out. We start to kind of get a new normal before we start expanding and getting more people in.
Absolutely, and it's kind of important too with a podcast network. I imagine running it from your end, that it's important that you kind of get to know people personally when you can as well. Like whether that is talk with them online on one of our social networks, or meeting them in person at a catacon or other conventions. But it really helps to introduce people at the speed at which you can meet people and become friends with them too.
Yeah, again, because I want to include people. Like when you came on, we did a show and tell. We don't do that for every network, but we kind of try. Network member, but we did a show and tell, so I got to know you. And then I did a trial with Dakota, and now I've done 2 trials with Dakota, and I met some of the rest of you at a catacon. So yeah, I like to kind of get these relationships started. Just for me is like, I don't say upper level because there are no levels, but just when I'm planning out like who I want in a trial or what I'm going to be doing next, it helps if I already have some idea of personalities. Like, hey, I think Tanner would be good for this, or I think Calum from the Released would be good for this, that kind of thing. So I think that's very helpful. But let's talk more about you. So 2017 was a big year for Shadow the Cabal.
It was. I think we put out 90% of our show in 2017. I think our first episode is right the Christmas week of 2016. So starting from episode 3 to currently, which is 44, I believe, just came out. Shadow of the Cabal has been rocking through 2017. We've actually managed to do this weird, crazy thing where about a year has passed in game, almost exactly to a year in real time, which I did not plan at all, but that's just sort of how the schedules worked out.
Say you did. No one will know.
No, I did it. It was very calculated.
Exactly.
I would say that Shadow of the Cabal, with its current campaign, we're probably about 2/3 of the way through the story. We've switched to a bi-weekly release day or release scheduling just because of real life issues and stuff like that. But I dare say that Shadow of the Cabal, this current campaign, will wrap up in 2018. So that's kind of scary and exciting, and we're excited to do see what's next and be able to keep going on in Rokugan.
Do you have any specific plans that you can share for when that happens, or is it still kind of nebulous?
It's a little bit nebulous too, but I don't really have problems sharing my thoughts. We're going to be shifting to the new edition of the game when it releases, which is probably everyone's kind of thinking Gen Con time, 2018.
Probably.
Yeah, that's what Fantasy Flight likes to do. That's what lots of publishers like to do. And we are going to be adding on a new cast member as well. Our good friend Amelia, who you may have also met at a catacon, and she's just been a good friend of ours. We've been playing games with her and stuff. So we are going to be adding her. Actually, I think it's the first time I've officially announced this.
Yeah, but I have not heard of this before, though I may not be in the loop.
Yeah. We have been playtesting the 5th edition beta off mic and just trying to, it's a very different rule system. So we're just trying to wrap our head around not only A, playing it, but B, playing it for radio. So we've been doing some sort of our own little beta tests in that, which is cool. And we are looking forward to doing the new edition. We're probably going to do a little bit smaller of a story because I think the rules and the mechanics in their current incarnation are more conducive to more character-based character development stories rather than globe-trotting international conspiracies. Sure. But you never know what we'll build up to. So that's sort of where the plans are for now. And once we get closer and wrap up Shadow of the Cabal, we're going to start thinking about that a little bit more.
So now, is the podcast going to continue to be called Shadow of the Cabal, even if you change the title of the campaign?
God, we really pigeonholed ourselves with that stupid name, didn't we?
Well, I think even when I was talking to you, I asked you, what happens if this campaign ends?
Right.
Because that was a concern for me as well.
We're currently, my hankering, like all of our social media is SOTC pod. So I want to keep those initials.
Oh.
And we have ideas for new shows that will... our current ideas that will keep those initials going. But if we need to rebrand, it's just going to be a Band-Aid that we have to rip off eventually. So, we are thinking about maybe rebranding to something a little bit more generic and, having individual campaigns. And certainly when we start the new one, we're going to go back and relabel all these ones Shadow of the Cabal, and then whatever this title of the next campaign is.
Yeah, it's tough. We've gone through that, as you probably know, a couple times on our
Mhm.
show. Once very very early on because we didn't know how Google worked, and then a year or so in, when after Evan left and Caleb came on, we went from the D&D Academy to the RPG Academy, and it was frightening. It was probably more scary than it was an actual challenge.
Right.
But yeah, it still was a little bit difficult, and you guys are growing, but it's better to do it earlier than later.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping that maybe 5 years from now, we'll get to the day where nobody even remembers that we were called Shadow the Cabal. But yeah, I mean, what's really important is that we just, and this is just advice to anybody else. If you're going to sort of rebrand or anything, be careful not to change podcast feeds and other stuff like that. Because, I mean, if you migrate to if you change the way that people can get your thing, you're going to lose people 100%. And that sucks. But you know what? If you have to have a more coherent brand, that's something to think about. So, but yeah, like I said, it's all very vague right now. Like probably, ideally, we'd launch that campaign probably in like September or October after we've had some time to record and get a feel for it. So that's sort of the current plan.
All right, very very cool. Now, are you guys have any? You folks have any? Convention plans? Obviously, I'm not trying to just shoehorn a catacon in there, but do you,
Michael? What's a catacon?
Do you plan on going to Origins or Gen Con or any other maybe local cons?
Yeah, I'm looking into. Well, we're definitely going to go to a catacon, the RPG Academy's premier tabletop convention. Michael makes me say this. No, I'm just kidding. We had so much fun at a catacon. I want to talk about that a little bit too.
I won't stop you.
Yeah. But yeah, this year we're definitely going to all plan to go to a catacon. Unfortunately, most of us are pretty remote from one another, so it's unlikely that any other conventions will be something that we can all show up at. I'm personally thinking about Origins this year, but I'm also balancing that against a local anime convention that's just like right downtown in Chicago because I'm trash. So So I'm weighing my options here, but definitely a catacon is something we're looking forward to.
All right, I'm pretty lucky. It's really rare to say lucky and live in Ohio in the same sentence, but I am pretty fortunate that I am very centrally located to several conventions, including both Origins and Gen Con. Neither one is more than 2-hour drive away. So yeah, unless something happens. I mean, obviously things can change, but
right.
My current plans are to go to Origins and Gen Con once again. And then there's a few other smaller local conventions that around here. There's Lexicon, Sin City Con, CincyCon. There's just a few just really close that I like to go to and basically promote our stuff. But run some games, talk to people, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, crap. I had a question and I just lost it. Oh God, I hate when that happens.
No, it's okay. We can talk about conventions a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Nope, lost it again.
You get paid to do this?
No. Probably has something to do with Origins. If you're going to go, whether this was I was thinking of or not, let me know. Maybe we can do something together, either play a game or run because I want to do some panels again this year. So that would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. Yeah, it's kind of cool that RPGs have such a history of originating in the Midwest, and it's nice if you're people like me and Michael who live in the Midwest. We don't have to go far to get to sort of those bastions of RPG culture. So it's cool.
Nice. All right. So kind of jumping over, we'll go into the show first, then we can circle back around to a catacon.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And always to the people who are in chat, if you have any questions or just want to give us topics to touch on, obviously let me know.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I remember what I was going to say.
Let's hear it.
Has nothing to do with the conventions. Recently, I got an email from one of our listeners about the GM Masterclass, which again, I'm going to talk about in a minute. Wanted to talk about how does knowing you're playing for an audience change the way you play?
Ooh.
Have you thought about that at all? Has that been something you've become aware of, that you're being recorded?
It is a constant presence in my mind. I play completely different. I play and run completely differently when I'm not being recorded versus when I am being recorded. I think that the best, let me back up. I think the reason for that is because I edit us and I edit myself. And when you listen to yourself again, you become very acutely aware of all the things about you that bug you. Yes. And all the things about their players that bug you and stuff like that. And so I've definitely become I feel like metagaming has kind of become a dirty word in RPGs, but it's really something that's quite important when you have to say for example, Ryan, who plays Usagi, he's going to this character and he's talking to this NPC, and I'm not quite sure where he wants to go with it. Sometimes I'll just pause and say, hey Ryan, what do you want out of this scene, so I can help us get there, so it's not just a dead end conversation. And stuff like that, being able to metagame and say even out of game in between sessions, hey, what are your plans for next session, so that I can sort of prepare to them at least a little bit to have your best. That's the big scale stuff that I think about when it comes to playing for radio. But then the smaller stuff is like, not repeating certain words or phrases after a while, because something that you might not notice, the listener will notice. And, just really trying to emphasize not picking the safest decision for your character or for your story, but the most interesting, most dramatic one in our case. So just stuff like that. I could probably write a whole blog post about that someday, and maybe I will, but
maybe you should.
Maybe I should. Yeah. There's a lot of considerations that you have to take into account. What's been your experience with that?
It's kind of hard for me, I guess, because I've experienced the same things that you have. And I've said this many times. One of the greatest things I think I've done to make myself a better GM is to listen to myself GM. Like all the time I've spent listening to myself, I've caught on to the phrases I use, the shortcuts I take. I can tell when I'm doing a good job and everyone seems, like they respond right away. And other times where I'm having to go, hey, it's your turn. Like, what did you want to do? And those sort of things. But I've said for a long time that I try to run my games almost like an action TV show.
Right.
And I find myself, as I'm running, building to that. It's almost like, okay, this is my commercial break. Like, I want to build up to a little bit of a moment, and then we'll have like a moment, commercial. And then, it's like, well, there's an episode break, or there's a
right.
break. And then I also find that there's a lot less boring stuff. D&D can sometimes be boring. It's kind of a slog. People go shopping and it's not an interesting shopping trip for an hour. And now it's just like, no, we got to keep, something needs to be happening. So either the shopping's over really quickly or something's going to happen while you're shopping.
Right. There's plenty of things in RPGs that are fun to play, but not fun to listen to, I would say. For example, my my players have been bugging me for so long to want to run a tournament arc of like a really boring, like board game tournament in L5R. Oh. Because just the personalities and stuff that can get involved in that with like the slightest amount of tension can really make a fun play experience. And but I have to consider more than entertaining just my players and be able to entertain both the audience. And while I'm sure there are some people in my audience that would want to listen to the Emerald Trio in a Go tournament for 5-episode arc,
Well, that's where your editing has to come in, and you basically make it like a wrestling match. Like, you have an announcer come in and you just like pare it down to these little moments, like a trailer, smash cut.
Yeah. And I think that something that you sort of alluded to with like being the director of an action movie as a GM, at least in an actual play environment, if you're trying to run a pretty tight ship, I think you should think about not only being the director, but being the editor too. And knowing, like you said, that, what, if we record ourselves going shopping, it's just going to get cut out anyway. So let's just skip it. Yeah. Get something, write down whatever you're buying while I narrate this next thing, and we can just go. And being able to, all the time that you save during recording saves you probably triple or quadruple that amount of time when editing it. So that's sort of my thought with that.
Yeah, I think I believe it's Quentin Tarantino who has said that you make a movie 3 times. You make the movie when you write it, you make the movie when you shoot it, and you make the movie when you edit it.
Yes.
And I feel that is very much the way I do my podcast. Is like I plan what I think will happen. What actually happens, and then what I edit to make it sound like happens, not always the same thing.
Yeah, I kind of blew my players' minds a little bit when I first told them about the stuff that I did in editing that they weren't aware of. Like, sometimes 2 people will say something at the same time, and I'll just mute one of them because the thing they said was less interesting than the thing the other person said. And you do have to have a lot of trust with your GM, and luckily your editor at least. And my players do a good job of trusting me, but I know groups like Redemption. I know Kendall, who is a player in Redemption, edits, and the GM Chris does not edit, and that was always not that it's weird to me, but that's not the dynamic that I would go for. And you have to have a lot of trust.
Oh yeah.
As a GM, you have to have a lot of trust in your player to retell your story, I think, the way that you want it. And maybe I'm just too much of a control freak to let that happen.
That's me. Yeah. I really like having that power of editing to manipulate things if I can. One thing that happened, this was in Dark Discovery, which I almost kind of hate bringing up because one, it's only for patrons, and two, we haven't been doing it in like a year, which sucks. But there was a thing that happened with just one character. Like the character was separate from everyone else, but obviously everyone was at the table. And that character did something that if the other characters knew about it, probably would have been upset. And then after the fact, that player came back to me and said, you know what, I want to change what I did and not do that. And we re-recorded in secret a different version of that scene that was in the episode, but was never, no one knew about it unless they listened to the podcast. And I don't think players do.
That's like some Empire Strikes Back stuff with the filming the false ending to who Luke's father is. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool actually. And again, I manipulate the crap out of my audio. I'll move people dialogue around. I'll cut it. I'll take a laugh that if I say a joke that I think is funny, no one else does, I'll take a laugh from somewhere else and plug it in. So it sounds like I got a laugh.
Yeah, I've done stuff like that too. I think probably the most sinister thing I've done is there was a part recently where slight spoilers, a very beloved non-player character was killed in Shadow of the Cabal. And my players, we all knew that the drama was good and we were hooting and hollering about it. But of course, I can't have that on the final product, everyone going, yeah, you know. So I just edited in, I cut and pasted like 5 seconds of just dead silence. And then one of my players, Justin, he made like a gasp noise when it happened, but it sounded exactly like a death rattle. And so I put that in right when it happened, and then it sound, I don't know. I think I did a good job of making it sound very impactful when at the table there was a lot of chatter about it and stuff like that, just sort of, that's the difference, I guess, between, what happens at your table and what happens at the, and in the final finished product. I think you could, if you just listen to our show, or if you just listen to like your guys' episodes of L5R, or say, for example, if you're listening to One Shot, you just listen to their Dogs in the Vineyard episodes, you could get a very different impression of what that group is actually like. You would be forgiven for thinking that we're a bunch of joyless sobs, and we would, but that's not the case at all. We're having a good time the whole time we play, pretty much, and it's very different once the final product comes out.
I think that's editing like that is kind of like a magician. That if you do your job right, no one will know you did anything at all. And so if they notice that I'm editing and cutting, that I'm doing a poor job, it should be to the audience like that's just what happened. But it can be very manipulative, and I don't do like a crazy amount of stuff, but like you said, if people talk over each other, I'll pick one and cut the other one, or I'll move it around. I think probably, other than that scene in Dark Discovery, I did have something where there's like a whole subplot that was just boring, and I just cut it out. Like it was just gone, and it was never in there.
I've done stuff like that too. We have also done things like, I talked about this on another podcast, but we have done things where we like reshot an entire end of an episode because we all thought it was just garbage when we did it, we recorded it. So we went back and recorded that and just sort of inserted that, and it ended up way better, and nobody would have known if I wouldn't have said anything about it. So yeah.
So there's some people responding to that moment in your game that apparently it was very emotional to them as well.
Yeah. Sorry. I was talking, our friend Amelia, who is going to be joining us. I think I've made her cry in public by listening to our show like 3 times. And like, she told me a story when she was like listening in her kitchen making dinner, and her kids came up to her and they're like, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And she had to no regrets. You know what you signed up for.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on from that now. But again, I'll throw it once again. We got a few more people that seem to be joining. If you guys have any folks, damn it, it's so hard to get over. Y'all. If y'all have any questions for us,
come on down. You hear?
Yeehaw. Throw them in chat and we will try to address them. But as far as the podcast specifically, 2017 was an interesting year here at the Academy. We were nominated for an Emmy again.
Multi any
Multi.
nominated.
We've lost both times, but as everyone says, the nomination is the award, which until you win is what you have to say.
Does multi nominated or double nominated sound better?
I think multi.
Okay.
I don't know. And now if we get it again, it'll be triple. Like
right. That sounds way better than multi, I think.
But I kind of want to focus too on back to back because that's pretty impressive as well.
Right. And I think that even being nominated is an honor, but it is a cool thing to have a group of very influential and very clever people call you out as saying, hey, this is something worth listening to, even if it's not going to win, because the Ennies are a popularity contest. But yeah. But I think that even all those other podcasts that are on there, and especially the winners, and even all the other stuff in the Ennies, like the products and the books and stuff that come out, like those are all worth taking a look at just for being nominated. So
that's pretty exciting. And then so just recently they put up the posting for next year. Like basically they're starting to accept products and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm struggling. I don't know if I'm going to submit our show this year.
You don't want to be burned 3 times?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the upside? Like, obviously, the best thing could happen, we get nominated again, and then we win. Mm-hmm. But what's more likely to happen is that we get nominated and lose, or we don't get nominated at all.
Yeah, I mean, so you've made a critical mistake by telling people this plan. If you wouldn't have said anything and you submitted yourself and didn't even make it to the top, you could have at least saved face and said,
we didn't.
Oops, we didn't do it. But if you submit and at least you make it to the nominations, then that's more eyes on the show. That's more eyes on the network. I think that there are a group of people who probably will go out and listen to a couple episodes of everything. And I don't know. I still think that striving for something, even if you think you're not going to win, is still worth it.
Yeah, and I probably like when I saw the posting, I went back and I looked at all the episodes that qualify as of yet. Because I think if anything, more than anything, I think the reason we have done so well is I've been very selective about what I've submitted. I think I've picked good episodes, and there were a couple in there that I do think are good. But then probably the biggest thing is I probably will submit GM Masterclass.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that is well worth doing.
It's very different than anything else I've heard of or I think's out there. So I think that might be worth the submission if nothing else.
100%.
So very, very cool.
So what have been your highlight moments of 2017 with regards to the RPG verse?
I continue to again be surprised not only of the people who join the network, but how many people will talk to me like I'm somebody. People who want to promote their products on our show, designers and developers who want to run a trial for us. So, like we got to play Masks with Brendan Conaway. That was amazing. That was like one of my favorite games that we've ever played. So it's just cool to continue to get that reminder that, we do have something that people appreciate and there's a bit of weight to it. We may not be the most downloaded show in the world, but I feel like we have some respect in the community, and it's just kind of cool to be reminded of that every now and then.
Yeah, it's very weird when I met someone in person at a Catacon who was like, hey, it's cool to meet you. I sought you out because I listened to your show and I like it. And like, I not that I'm like a celebrity, obviously, but like I went from literally nobody caring about what I did RPG wise, except my own table a year ago from today, pretty much. And like being able to at least just throw yourself out there. And now we've made so many friends with not only our patrons, but people that we hang out with in real life or play games with and stuff. And all that stuff is just still pretty wild to me that people, I mean, I put the work, we all put the work into it, and we knew that we were making something that we liked, but making something that other people would like, and not only say that, but reciprocate. I think the first time that struck with us was when we saw on either Reddit or Twitter or somewhere, somebody else that wasn't us recommending our show to somebody. That was the moment where it's like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, okay. We're yeah, it's very cool. So I love all that stuff. And I want to just say to anybody listening, if you ever have a nice thing to say about a creator, you're never going to bother them by saying it. Like, we need the fuel sometimes, because you know what, when you're listening to your three stupid best friends prattle on in your editing session in the deep dark of the night, sometimes you need a little boost being like, this is cool. And you're never going to bother a creator by doing that.
Yeah, I probably one of my favorite moments of the year, and I don't remember it specifically or exactly, I should say. I can't remember if it was your show or Redemption, but I know it was one of the two. And I think it was your show because you're more recently added to the network. I had went somewhere and was like promoting your show or talking about it, and someone said, "I know if it's part of the Academy, it's quality." And like,
that's awesome.
I was just like, "Thank you."
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So that was really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other really big.
What'd you do at a Catacon? Let's talk. Do you want to talk about a Catacon
Sure.
2017? Just a couple brief highlights of it.
Yeah. So Catacon, again, this was our 5th year, technically 4th, but again, we're going to say 5th. Just move on. 5th year doing this. It's gotten bigger every time. It continues to grow. It was more successful than the year before. I was very busy. I pretty much ran the desk 24/7. Well, we weren't open 24/7, but whenever we were open, I was there. Other than I ran a panel, and I think I ran one game. And pretty much other than that, I was at the desk. But much like the editing is magic, if you do it right, no one knows. We got nothing but great feedback on. And, well, we had like the table numbering system, but that's minor stuff.
But it's still good feedback. Nobody said this sucks. This was awful. Yeah.
Right. Just in general, people really seem to enjoy it, and they a lot of people said it seemed like this year was smoother than the others, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if it was. I just think we muscled through it better.
Yeah.
And the fact that it seemed like it was more smooth or more successful makes me very happy that we put all the work into it so that it came out, and it was awesome. Like I told people, if you would ask me Thursday if we were going to do it next year, I probably would have said no. And then if you asked me on Sunday, I probably would have said yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was just such an awesome experience to be part of and see all the people that are there once again enjoying something that I've helped create. It's it pushes a lot of buttons for me and kind of makes the effort worth it. But before you see the payoff, it's just like, I've done all this work and this could just burn to the ground and everyone hate it.
Yeah.
So
for me, it was my first time ever running a game at a convention. I went to Gen Con when I was a teenager, like 10 years ago, and I maybe played in like 1 or 2 games, like RPG games, but like this is the first time as like an adult who kind of knows what they're doing, going and running and playing in games. And it was awesome. I didn't meet anybody who wasn't just the nicest person that I'd met, and everyone is so the overwhelming impression that I got from just chatting to people was everyone was very into the atmosphere of it, and everyone knew that everyone there was there to play games, and it was an inclusive environment, and everybody. I think the bigger cons get the bigger your convention is and the more widespread it is, the higher of a chance you have of getting that guy or that person, in one of your groups. But from everybody I've talked to, and certainly in my experience, it was just an incredible time.
Yeah, I think we're the size, like if we get bigger, which I want to get bigger, but I think if we get to a certain level, then you'll start to get more clicky, for lack of better words. Like the War Gamers will be over here, and the L5 Arbors will be over here, and the D&Ds will be over
all
here.
5 of us.
All 5 of you. But since, sorry, I'm trying to read the chat. But since we're still small enough, everyone's kind of integrated together, and I think that's an environment that's amazing. And I'm so happy to be a part of it. Jay Thunderific talked about when I got stolen to be on TV. Fun fact, that net never aired. It didn't actually air. So I just got really nervous. The guy said I did a great job. I was like freaking out. And then it never actually even aired. But
was that on Sunday?
Did that happen? It was on Saturday, like evening, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe even later. And I think I was running my game during that time, and I saw everyone kind of stopped and looked around and was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Yeah. Yeah, I think that was kind of the issue, is that because it ended Sunday basically at midday, and it wouldn't have even aired until Saturday at 11.
Right.
Kind of missed the boat, but I do have the guy's card, and he told me next year to call him before the event.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we can get some TV coverage like a month before.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of games are you looking forward to playing in the new year? What's on your docket? What's on your plate?
So I'm still really wanting to get into Fantasy Age. Like
Hmm.
I talked about before, I got to play with the designer or one of the designers, Chris Pramus,
Hmm.
and I
He's
really
been around for a long time in the industry.
yes,
Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff.
and he was it was a fun game. I like the system, and I've wanted to run. I've actually tried to run it a couple of times and it's fallen through. I've signed up to run it at a local con, but so far no one has signed up to play.
Hmm.
And I think we're actually going to do a game next Tuesday here at my house. We're still having issues with Dark Discovery because we can't get everybody together in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to play that next week on Tuesday. So it'll probably be streamed. Me trying to run Fantasy Age. But I just think it's an interesting system. It does a lot of things that I think are smart
Hmm.
and I like, and so I'm pretty interested to kick the tires a little bit more and see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been sort of shopping around. I was looking at the one that interests me the most. I believe the Blue Rose RPG
Yep.
uses the Fantasy Age system,
Yep.
and from the sort of premise of that, the little elevator pitch or whatever I read of that, that one seems really interesting too. So
I bought that sight unseen basically at Gen
yeah.
Con based off of the description.
Hmm.
In like high school and early college, I was in love with Mercedes Lackey's
Yeah.
Heralds of Valdemar series. I literally read every one of them, which is weird because they're all the same book. They have different character names, but essentially the same thing happens every one of
Yeah,
them.
that's fantasy.
Yeah, but I absolutely loved those. And basically they said this is, they even used Mercedes Lackey as an example.
Right, the romantic fantasy type
Yes.
of, yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I definitely want to try that out. So I bought the books. I don't think they've been opened. Like they're on the shelf, but it's definitely on my short list of games I want to play. I want to get back to Dark Discovery. Like again, I keep hating to say that, but it's one of the best games I've ever played. I love it. I think the characters are great. I think the story's so much fun, and it's frustrating to me that we haven't been able to play it. Not only just because it's a Patreon thing, and I feel like I'm letting people down, but it's just like it's a fun game. Like I want to play.
My favorite, probably aside from Shadow of the Cabal, which I'm legally obligated to say, my favorite RPG campaign I've ever been in was is actually going to start up again. Me and my buddies, probably back in like 2012, my 4 best friends from high school, we started playing a Pathfinder adventure path known as Jade Regent. And it's a really cool adventure path. It's basically about taking it's Oregon Trail going over the North Pole into fantasy Japan.
Oh,
it is wild. Yeah, it's super interesting. I love Pathfinder adventure paths. I think they're great at writing adventures. Can't stand the system.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, so we sort of and the GM of the game, he moved to Japan and he lived there for a couple of years, so that made playing it very difficult even when we could play online, you know.
The time difference is pretty drastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it was crazy. So we kind of spun our wheels on that game and we played, you know, a couple sessions a year basically, and then like last year basically we didn't play it at all. We didn't touch it, but now we are getting ready and gearing up, I believe, to play it in 5th edition D&D. And this is the first time I've been excited about a Dungeons and Dragons in a very long time. I ran a lot of 5th edition when it first came out.
Welcome back into the fold. It's jump into the pool. It's nice and warm.
Yeah, I know. No, I ran a lot of 5th edition. I think the reason I kind of bounced off of it is because it's the opposite of most games for me, where I'd much rather play it than run it. I find it most of the time I like running games. I'm sort of the forever GM, but specifically for this group, this campaign, the characters that we've invested in and stuff, I'm just really looking forward to getting back and playing with my 4 best friends again and just doing something off mic, not even with any of my RPG Academy people, just for me again is super exciting to me.
That's the purity of what we want people to play games, not like we do because we play on mic. We just want people to play games.
Right.
Though that actually does bring up another thing that I'm pretty excited about, and I don't want to take credit necessarily, but I'm pretty excited that quite a few people in my periphery have started podcasts. A couple of our patrons, Danny and John, are both now part of, I think, multiple podcasts. They're working on one. I think it's kind of a secret, so I can't give too much information, but they may be working with people in the network to develop a show. And Michael from Redemption is now on a different show as well. He's on a streaming show. It's World of Greyhawk, I think.
Yep.
I just think that's cool. You know, when I was a manager at my previous jobs, the thing that I always tried to do is I wanted to get people promoted. Like that was my goal was, you make me look good, I'll make sure you get the credit.
Mhm.
and then I want you to be my peer, and then someday I want to work for you. I want you to get promoted as high as you can go. And I sort of feel the same way about like podcasts. Like I love getting more people in, giving them advice, helping them out, whether it's in the network or just an email, and
Mhm.
seeing other people do amazing things. It's just so very cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, I pretty much had the same exact entry where I was a fan, like I said, mentioned a couple times earlier, of the L5R episodes. I reached out to Jim on Twitter, and he sat down and talked with me, bless his heart, about trying to, do an L5R podcast, and he helped me. And I think and I've in turn, like you said, I've talked to my patrons who are interested. We actually have another group of our patrons who are doing another L5R actual play podcast set in Iron Rokugan. So there's going to be trains and guns and stuff. It's gonna be wild. And like helping them and being able to talk to them about how to play for radio and help them learn all the lessons that you had to sort of figure out yourself. It's so important to not pull the ladder up behind you in certain ways. And I think that a lot of people, you and myself included, if people didn't help us out, where would we be? So it's super important to just help other people get involved too. And I think there might be some part of your brain who's like, oh, I don't want competition, but it's like, who cares? It's a creative endeavor.
It's not a zero-sum game. If someone creates a show better than mine, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stop listening to me. And if they do, it's my fault. It's because my content isn't good, not because someone's better.
Right. You should always push each other to get better and stuff like that. So I'm super excited to see. I've talked to a couple of my patrons and people in my circles who are also gearing up to podcasts, and I'm excited to listen to those in 2018.
So a couple of people mentioned that Danny is also part of the Greyhawk Twitch stream. So it's Michael from Redemption and Danny in there as well. So talk briefly on Patreon. Like our Patreon is now higher than it's ever been before.
As is ours.
That's very exciting. And again, it's flabbergasting that people would care, one, what I say on the mic, two, pay me to help me do more of it. But thank you to everyone who does that. I took a look at our numbers, and our numbers actually overall are down a little bit from last year. I think there's a couple different reasons why. One, I don't know that we released as many episodes this year. And two, we also, after a Catacon last year, we kind of died. We didn't release a whole lot in November and December last year, or this year.
It's just been a hell year for everybody also. So
true. But our number one most downloaded episode, and I don't know why this one specifically, it's Wrought Iron episode 20, was downloaded almost 4,000 times.
It must have been do you remember what happened in that one?
I don't think it was anything in particular that was good. I mean, or better. I mean, like you would think if episode 20, like 19 should have been right there and 21 should have been right there.
Right.
But no, just 20. Maybe we got on some, like somebody might have mentioned just somewhere I didn't know about, and like people checked it out and then didn't like it. And then we had a bunch of our faculty meetings hit right at like the 2,900, excuse me, mark. And our average is about 2,000. So that's a pretty significant increase on those specific episodes. So that was pretty excited. And I'm also very excited that it was actually our least downloaded of the year, but it was Made Men, like our first actual play, which is now 5 years old. There's still 67 people who are listening to Made Men, apparently. So thank you for listening, and hopefully you'll stick around until we get pretty good audio. So what about you? I mean, I don't want to talk out of school, but are your numbers improving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are averaging pretty much. So I think every podcast will kind of run into this, where if you're a serial podcast, your first 3 or 4 will have the highest downloads, and people will fall off of it, and that's cool. So aside from those, we're averaging around 500 listens per episode, which is phenomenal for a very unapproachable niche podcast that's 44 episodes in. That blows my mind. I think the most popular ones that we did were actually our 3 episodes of the beta playtest for L5R 5th edition.
So you brought in all the people who were just interested in that,
right? Because a lot of when that came out, well, it's kind of a funny story. There's this this RPG called Lancer that was coming out. It's or is previewed. It's sort of a mecha action game, and me and my group were like, wow, we're getting really into this. This is going to be awesome. We should play this on mic. Should we play it on mic? Would that be fun? And then Fantasy Flight the next week announced after we created our characters that L5R 5th edition was coming out, and it's here now. Please play test it. So we had to cram that into a week of reading the whole document, preparing it, running a session. And I mean, it was a ton of fun, but we hardly edited those episodes at all because putting out polls and stuff, people overwhelmingly seemed like they wanted a sort of raw, they wanted to see what it would be like at their table, you know, and less sort of what we do, which is a produced. But those 3 episodes, which is a part 1 and 2 an adventure, then sort of our feedback, as rough and messy as they are, those were our highest, pretty much our fastest listened podcast, I would say.
And that's something we didn't touch on earlier when we were kind of giving like podcasty advice, is that you need to decide what the point of your show is. And if it's to explain the rules, teach a game, then you need to leave in a lot more stuff than we do in our shows now that we're more for entertainment. Trials are a little bit different. Those are specifically to learn the game, so we leave a lot of that in, like questions, like people say, I don't understand this. How does this work? And then it's explained, stays in. In our regular show, that all gets cut out because that's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah, our sort of MO with that was we explain everything the first time it comes up, and then from there on we go along with it. And I think that sort of has been working for us. So if there's anybody out there who's looking to start their own show thinking about that, I would consider, you know, explaining a rule or an exception to a rule the first time it comes up, and then other than that, just sort of keep on trucking and don't waste time with it.
So I want to talk a little bit about 2018. Again, we sort of touched on it a little bit already, but I'm very excited. I mean, stupidly excited about GM Masterclass. I cannot overstate how excited I am about people listening to that and starting to get feedback.
How many episodes did that turn into?
Well, we have 7 already recorded. We need 1 more. So we did actually lie, and I started releasing them before they were done.
Shame on you.
I know. But I feel like I got 7 done, 100% done. They're already scheduled. I don't have to do any. If I die right now, you'll get 7 of them. And Jim, basically his schedule's pretty open. So I'm really confident.
He doesn't do much, let's be honest.
That we're going to be able to get another recording session in the next 7 weeks.
That's awesome.
The last one, episode 7, I edited the same day. So like we recorded it and it was edited in a couple hours. So
yeah,
as long as we get an episode in the next 7 weeks, we'll be fine. But I've already had one person say that first episode, I think you might have saw it on Discord. The first episode's an hour and 42 minutes long.
It is.
That might be intimidating for someone, but I think once you figure out what we're doing, because we're listening to the podcast, it makes sense why it's long, but I don't know.
Right. And I don't think, like you kind of set up, it's not really meant to be, hey, this is your first game, listen to this to learn how to GM. It's not that at all. I think that the people who are going to gravitate towards it are the people who want a bit more meat to digest when it comes to GM advice and stuff like that. So I think they're going to do phenomenally. And like I said, I've listened to parts of it so far. I'm making my way through it slowly on my commutes and digesting it. And it's awesome. Yeah. And I think that, like you said, it is something very unique sort of in the podcast space, as far as I'm aware. So you guys have done that with the one-shot episodes, correct? The first
full series, which is 4 episodes of one shot.
Yeah. Now, are you going to do part 2? Are you going to go through part 2?
Maybe.
Maybe.
First of all, to talk to Jay Thunderific, they're all longer than our normal episodes. They're not all hour 40 minute. I think there's like one that's like 115. There's one that's like 120. But because we're trying to listen to the episode, which is each episode's like an hour long, and then stop and comment, they're all going to be hour plus. And that's even like each episode is half of an episode of the show. Except for episode 3 of the show, of the AP was pretty short, so we did that in 1 episode, and then the last episode of the show is going to be 3 of our episodes. So 6, 7, and 8 are all just on that final episode, but that final episode is almost 2 hours long. So,
yeah.
But to answer your question, the answer is maybe. Like I am very excited about this show, this series. And if people enjoy it and we get a lot of feedback, we get a lot of interest, then we will do it again. If it kind of dies and people are like, I don't know, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. You're effectively mixing and editing 2 podcasts together with what you're doing with it.
In a way, and making sure that we have stuff to say, and like, you know, again, sometimes we make jokes over top the audio that I cut out because they're not funny, and other times I'll put them in. And the first episode, the transition between us and the original audio is not as clean. I kind of figured out how to do that on the third episode, because the first episode we recorded both at the same time.
Yeah.
So in the third episode, the transitions are great. So
Yeah.
I've got it down now. I'm ready to go. But so if people like it, the goal is to do a question and answer live show on Twitch in between. So like once all 8 are out, set up a day, Jim and I get on here and let people talk about like what we didn't cover or what questions they have. And then we would do the second series. And then after that, I'd like to look at maybe partnering with other APs, our network included, but not necessarily specifically that. I've already had 2 other shows that actually have said we would be interested in doing this with you.
Yeah.
So that might be something I'd like to just make that a part of what we do all the time. But part of me wonders if there's one, it's Jim, and I'll give Jim all the credit for being Jim. 2, it's one shot, so it's a quality AP. And 3, I was also a player.
Right.
So I
was going to mention that, like, would there be a lot of value in that if you were just an outsider to whatever this AP is?
Right. So, I mean, I would have to listen to it and like take notes and then figure out, okay, why did this happen? And so then I thought, well, maybe do we bring in a player also? But then we got to deal with 3 people's audio. And
yeah,
so I'm not sure it will.
There's stuff to work out. Yeah. But like I said, I really hope that you get a good response on it. I think, or at least a good listener response on it. Because I think everyone has had pretty much nothing but nice things to say about it. I mean, it's only been out for a day or 2, right? So,
but we shared it with quite a few people, and again, we got nothing but good feedback. We had one person who said they liked it, but they were concerned that it was a little self-indulgent. I mean, we literally have like 11 hours of audio.
Yeah, I run into that a lot. Like when we were doing our year in review episode of Shadow the Cabal, and we had Amelia on, and she basically fielded patron and listener questions to us about the show in its first year. And even that felt very navel-gazy. I think the response to our thing has been good too. It's sort of not exactly what you're doing, obviously, but more of a retrospective, here's why I did what I did. We did that a little bit, and even that I worried about coming across like that. But at a certain point, if people are listening to it, there's a demand for it. And there's always going to be that little goblin in your brain that tells you what you're doing is stupid. And you just got to learn to.
I don't think they got cut out, but they may have. But there was a couple of times where I told Jim, let's do it. We're only going to do it once. Like, I don't want to come back in 10 years and go, we should do that again because we left stuff out. So we put it all in there. Anything that we had that we thought was important, I would ask questions. He would expound on them. Because like editing, I'm not doing a lot as far as editing goes. I'm not cutting much out other than like ums and ahs, but pretty much I'm leaving it all in there because I think it's all relevant. But yeah, so I'm interested to see if it goes as well as I think it will.
Yeah. And, even if it is a one and done type of thing, at least you have that anthology of say, hey, you want to learn to be a good GM? Listen to these seven or 8 episodes. Yeah. That'll teach you how we did it, at least. Yeah.
And it's very specific advice. And I think that's, again, not to beat our own drum too much, but I think that's what I think is so interesting and maybe innovative is that usually we give advice in a vacuum. Like, work with your players, hook them in, improv, and then it's like, okay, how do I actually do that? And this is actually happening at the table. This is where I actually did one of those things.
Well, sort of speaking to that point a little bit, I just want to call out a set of friends that I've made this past year, and a really, really good podcast. They're not part of the RPG Academy, so I'm not blowing smoke just to blow smoke, but they are RPG Lessons Learned. They're an awesome, awesome show, and they're doing very much what you're talking about. They basically do postmortems on their own sessions and say, hey, this thing that we did, this sucked and it didn't work and we need to do better. And the GM and the players all talk with each other and they give out good pointed advice that isn't in a vacuum. And that's something that's really underrated, I feel like. And their whole sort of mission statement is stuff like, you can say, oh, improvise better, work with your GM, work on combat, but it's different when someone says, this is exactly why this combat section sucked. And I'm going to try to do better and have some takeaways from it. I'd love to invite them to our network, but they are part of the Radio Free Cybertron, and they have been podcasting since 1999.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think we're going to snatch them away, but but they're an awesome show, and they're really great guys. So if you ever are looking for more sort of GM advice that's similarly pointed like that, I would definitely check them out.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And then the last thing I have is a Catacon 2018. I don't have any information yet. I am very frustrated with the DCC. I've made no bones about it. Like, I was not very happy with some of the interactions I had with management last year. They weren't as helpful as I wanted them to be. So I have an email into them. I'm waiting on them to respond. Assuming we can work out what we're currently negotiating, there will be a 2018, but I can't announce it just yet because I don't want to say anything and then it fall apart.
It'll get here when it gets here.
It will. And, we've already got some contingency plans on when we can announce something. We're going to do, we'll have things will happen very quickly after that. Because more than likely, I'll say right now, there's going to be an Catacon 2018. I just don't know what it's going to look like because it may not be at the DCC. And if it's not at the DCC, our options are very, very limited. So either have to leave Dayton or we have to make it much smaller and just go, we probably won't have room for vendors. We probably won't have room for panels. Probably only have room for like 200 people. And then, 200 people show up, which would not be a bad time, but I also don't want to do that. I want people to be able to come. So I'm really hoping that the DCC gets their crap together this week and we get that worked out.
Here's my resolution for Catacon 2018. Here's what is going to change. We're going to get some goons, some minions to man the desk, and we're going to get you into games. we need to separate you. We need to take the spreadsheets out of your hand. We need to plop you at a table and actually get you playing. You got to enjoy the fruits of your labor, man.
Yeah, that actually is one of my goals as well. One thing I can say is we did have quite a few people, just people within the community, listeners to the podcast, people who come to a Catacon who stepped up when I talked about how it was frustrating and it was a lot of work. I mean, I probably have maybe a dozen or more people that have said, I will move heavy things. I will work the desk. I will run, get you food. Just all you have to do is ask. So we have a Discord set up for our show, and there's a certain channel that's just for people who volunteered. I'm calling them Acadeteers because, Brandy. But we're talking to them, and once we get things working, we do hope that we can utilize some volunteers to do things like man the desk or, just run the game library or the raffles and stuff and free myself and some of the other faculty up to be more involved in whether it's playing games or running games or just walking around talking to people, shaking babies, kissing hands, that whole thing.
Yeah, I think that it's and if you're listening to this and you plan on going to a Catacon or you're a big fan of the RPG Academy and you want to help out and pay back a little bit, you know what? Just let somebody know, and we will try to hook you up and get your ass at the desk for a couple hours or something. Not the whole weekend, obviously, right, but just any help so that we can all also enjoy the show. I say I didn't help at all. I just played and ran games. Yeah. But
so a couple people in chat, Jay Thunderific and not another Nathan, both have said they are a Cadeteer, so they're already part of the process. So thank you, gentlemen, very much. I appreciate that. So we're at about an hour. So again, I'll throw it out one more time. If anybody has any questions they would like to hit us up with, we will be happy to answer them while we wait for things to catch up. Tanner, where can people find your work on the internet?
They can find me. The best way to get a hold of me is on Twitter. If you go to twitter.com/SOTCpod, like Shadow of the Cabal podcast, you can find us there. We are on iTunes, Google Play, and wherever anybody else posted us. Those are the only ones I've put us on manually. Shadow of the Cabal podcast. We are a samurai audio drama. Born Identity meets Seven Samurai meets Game of Thrones. That's sort of the tone that we go for. And if you want to reach out to us, just reach out to us on Twitter. And we also have a Patreon at patreon.com/SOTCpod, just to keep the show running, get some new equipment. Dakota's microphone ate it this year, and so we had to replace that. It's okay. I mean, our Patreon covered it, but just stuff like that helps us keep the show going. And we are happy to keep going into 2018.
Very cool. Thank you again for joining me tonight. Thank you for you and your entire crew for being a part of the network and doing what you do. I think you do good work for the hobby and for your show, which is why we wanted you to be a part of what we do. As for myself, again, Michael at the RPG Academy. Pretty much anywhere you search the RPG Academy, if something comes up, it's me. We also have the show email, which is the RPG Academy at Gmail, Twitter, Facebook, blah, 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 blah. As soon as I know something about a Catacon, it will be announced very quickly, but I don't have anything to announce just yet. So anything for 2018? Last words. What are you looking forward to? Bold predictions.
Bold predictions. I think that digital gaming, specifically virtual tabletops, are going to take off, and they are going to leave their effect on the industry in a very interesting way. And I'm very excited to see how that goes. We play digitally, we play remotely. About 90% of my gaming is done via Roll20, and I am super thankful for that it exists. And I'm really looking forward to what kind of stuff is going to shake out of it.
Very, very cool. For myself, I will predict that we will not win in any. Whether that means I submit it or not, I predict that we will not win.
You're so pessimistic.
Awesome. Well, Tanner, thank you so much. For everyone in chat, thank you for joining us. I don't see any questions coming up, so I will look for the button and we will do an awkward wave out. Bye.